You are now listening to
the AFL brand, where we talk interesting stuff about almost everything: business, family, health, self-awareness, success, marketing. All here on the AFL brand podcast.
What's good, Mike?
Messing up niggas intro. Welcome to another episode of the AFL brand podcast. Super excited to get back on. I had a few girls on the other day, and we were talking about my goal to get back into the daily podcasting. I just think, throughout every day, you think about your day, and you're having, whether it's conversation with clients, whether it's conversation with people generally, valuable conversations that your audience, that people who are your potential audience would benefit from. And, just in conversation with our guests today, just in our interactions together, which are very, very informal, oftentimes nuggets are being dropped. And so I wanted to get him on the podcast, really admire his success. And I know he has a lot more success to achieve. Really impressed with his business acumen and technical knowledge. And so glad to have him on. Very excited to hear his insights on different topics. We'll just bounce around for a bit, talk about business, talk about life, talk about marketing. And so without further ado, we have as a guest on the show today, Travis Miller.
All right, thank you very much, brother. Appreciate you. Yes, we always talk in passing, but it's good to sit down for an extended period of time to have a conversation.
Yes. Hope is a weapon, eh?
Yes, as I wear the shirt more times than not. Yeah, I don't have to iron it, so
You wear a shirt under this? Do you sometimes go bareback with it?
No, I don't do bareback in this. I can't do this. No, not in this. You can't do the barebacks with the ones you love.
Yeah. I got you. Pun intended. So Travis, tell us a little bit about your background.
Mm-hmm.
I saw, and again, well, we'll get into where we are.
Yeah.
But one of the first videos I saw about you was you kind of telling the audience your background. And I'm oftentimes curious about what clicks in someone that they think, okay, I'm owning my own business, I'm not going to work for someone.
Mm.
And so let's go back to maybe school. Let's go back to that.
Mm.
Let's start from who you were in school. What was your first kind of entrepreneurial ambitions, executions, and let's go from there.
Right. So I think I'll always go back to the high school ages, but I'll always preface it by saying I was always interested in technology, right? I wouldn't even necessarily say back then, in my earlier years, I was entrepreneurial, but I did like to invent, or I did like to tinker and build things, right? And to a degree, that's what entrepreneurship really means to me in terms of designing something. It just depends on how you really activate that to live or how to make money and stuff like that. But I was always interested in technology. Mm-hmm. From an early age. My father owned an auto mechanic business, and my brother worked there as well too. He took over the business eventually.
Okay.
At some point, I was going down that path too, but I stuck down the technology. But even when I was young, after school, just taking parts and just trying to put parts together or tinker and learn a little bit from that. So always interested in tech, always interested in taking apart and putting together different components. Towards the end of high school, it really got focused more on the computer side of things, and really stuck that route in terms of technology. After I graduated college, I studied management information systems.
Now let's
pause.
Yeah.
High school still. Boom.
Right. So there must have been kind of a computer techie interest prior to.
Yes, but again, out of my own thing, I wish back then, we have now, we had more things in school, coding classes or technology workshops that just wasn't around back then.
Right.
All I had was Tech TV. I don't know if you remember Tech TV or G4 TV. It was
I remember G4, right?
It was on that station. I was just, every time after school, I would go and watch tech, and they had the show on it called Screensavers, where they would break down computer hardware and stuff
Right,
like that.
right.
And again, like through when I went to our auto shop after school, we had a computer, and I messed around with that more than I was
Yeah.
outside. So like naturally, I learned how to like type and dock or like to do paint.
Yeah.
And I just stuck around that interest and tried to learn a little bit more, like piece by piece.
Right.
And yeah, I kind of went from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in 12th grade now.
Yes.
When does the impetus say, I think I'm going to do something in computers?
So I think the impetus came around. I guess at that point, being exposed to it early, I was proficient in it to a degree. Even to the point in 12th grade, like I was taking notes on like a Palm Pilot.
Okay.
Like, and everybody's like, "What the hell is he doing?"
Yeah,
Boom, boom, boom,
yeah.
Like with the SD card and everything.
Yep.
And I think I was proficient in it, so it made sense. I like after talking to my mom, like, "What do you think I should do?" It's like, "Oh, you always were good in technology. Maybe you should do that." I was like, "Okay." So I started looking at computer science courses.
Right.
But then I saw this particular school I really liked. They didn't have a full computer science. By the way, they have management information systems.
Okay.
Which is computer science technically in the business school. It's like, okay, I guess my family owns small businesses. Maybe I could learn something business related too. But I
Right.
really primarily did the technology. So I ended up choosing management information systems and then going from there.
Okay. Where'd you go to school?
University of Tampa.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I've never been to college, but I'm often of the belief that travel helps you to come into yourself. Was that a kind of a I don't know, a light bulb moment for you, getting over there, having to live on your own, being outside of your normal sphere of influence, where you became the Travis we know today? Or would you say that you knew yourself, you were self-aware, you were...
No, okay. I didn't know myself, but
Yeah.
I knew I had one skill I could bank on, especially being far away from different people, was being friendly,
Right.
cracking jokes,
Right.
making friends fast.
Right.
Like I think as soon as I hit the ground running when I went to school, it was easy for me to like group up with people and then try to make a tribe and just connect with different people. So I think, and by extension, yes, that is the same thing, because you learn different cultures, you get out of your box, you go exploring more because you're moving with different people. So I think that seed of a skill helped me to explore a lot, but I still wouldn't say I knew myself.
Right.
Like back, like how I could look at it now, it's like, oh, that is a skill that I use to kind of navigate through it. But I was never not confident that, okay, if you put me in a particular situation or a particular place, I'll probably crack a joke to ease
Yep.
it and then kind of
Yep.
move from there. Yeah.
Did you deal with insecurities as a
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Because I was like huge. I was probably the same weight in high school
Right.
than it was back then. So that was a big thing. And then, and yeah, just the two sides of the coin of, okay, you're the funny guy. That could kind of lead to like, okay, wanting to please people or always wanting to be pleased, always be like funny or whatever like that.
Right.
And then that was an insecurity when that didn't always click, because you had different people with different sex, jocks, nerds. I was never a jock, I was never a nerd. I was kind of like in, that,
In between.
that middle American Pie type group of people.
Yes.
So,
yes.
so yeah, definitely insecurities. Again, the awareness of those insecurities, not necessarily back then.
Right.
But now looking back, I see that was more of a strength in terms of like that individuality that I own now. In terms of like, okay, just because I'm not cool doesn't mean I won't survive.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like, to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Introvert or extrovert?
I would say introverted.
Yeah.
People would say extroverted.
Right.
I would say introverted from an energy perspective, because like I could play the role, I could do what I need to do, but like I would prefer
Right.
to just be in my thoughts and just think all day.
Yep.
And quiet
Yep.
as much as possible. But I mean, I'll do that, and maybe that's changed over the last 2 or 3 years, where I realized more of the value of just having that seclusion, not to be like a hermit, but like to be like, okay, it's okay to be
Right.
by yourself and
Right.
to do these things. I think so. I think I lean more on the introvert side, but maybe ambivert if you want to use the
Yeah.
super technical term.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Ambivert?
that's what they call
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I think so too. I've often, people if I ever tell anyone now that I'm an introvert, people say, "Nah, not you." But my absolute preference is solo. You know, I think the reason I might come across as ambivert or extrovert now is because I just realized that there's very little opportunity in
Right.
in absolute introversion.
Right.
And
Like the
so
money doesn't come if you still like,
you can't make money as an absolute introvert.
yeah,
And if you're, while you know, I still have tremendous shyness around meeting new people and speaking publicly and things of the sort. I realize that this is something I need to overcome to reach my life's ambition.
Right, and it never stops. Like people think,
yeah, for sure.
like you think about that. You always get stage fright. No matter if you have the skills to do it, you
For
like,
sure.
okay, what's the people in the room,
Yeah.
all that vibe. Yeah, you definitely
Yeah,
get that.
yeah. So you did 4 years Tampa?
4 years in Tampa, school, and then I worked for another 3 years
There.
in advertising and marketing.
Okay, tell us
there,
about
yeah.
that. What was the range of your experience there?
So I think towards the end of the school year, that's when I did my first internship. It was actually at like a human resources software as a service IT company, super enterprise. And again, the school I went to is like a business school. Like they're very big on Microsoft,
Right.
and all that stuff. But after graduation, you know, I think we're all guilty at this particular point of it in terms of like having expectations of what life will be like out after school. Like you get a job right away and all that stuff. It isn't necessarily so, especially it was more difficult being international, where you needed like the proper paperwork and all that stuff. Luckily with the school or with most schools, depending on what your degree is, you get this thing called OPT, which is optimal or optional practical training.
Okay.
Where the school kind of gives you a work visa for a period of time to work.
And so you use that.
So I used that, but it still wasn't easy. So like I didn't really find anything right after college. Came back home that summer, worked with my cousin Vaughn in a tech company, but it was more hardware than software.
Okay.
But I was still on that that hunt trying to find something.
Yeah.
I think my authorization was processing during the time, so I was still killing that time.
Right.
Doing phone interviews and all that stuff, trying to set up, going back. Nothing really concrete set in stone.
And why was the ambition to go back? Why not say, all right, I'm back, let's...
Well, I wouldn't say it wasn't an ambition not to go back. It's just I was hitting the pavement here too, but nobody
So wherever
was doing,
something broke would have worked for you?
Yeah, where anything would broke would have worked for me. Like there was no one who at that time I wanted to stay on the coding side of things.
Right.
And nobody was really.
And you're
offering the
training
coding.
in MIS.
Right.
Provided
Management
coding
Yeah.
training. Okay.
So like it gives you a broad range, so you could go different paths. You could stay. You get you introduced to application development, database design, full systems design. That's kind of like a marriage of all those things.
Right.
Or you
And so
could go
give me practical examples of all of those. So coding, you
Right.
produce applications for apps.
Yeah, web apps, applications. You just learn the programming language and you build something in a case study for whatever. Database design is more of that back end development of it, where it processes the data. Business analytics is just taking that data, using statistics to get, reporting, analytics, something useful for the organization. All those different things. So we
Right.
got exposure to all those things. I thought coding was magic.
Right.
So I stuck the coding side. And
You saw the business aspect of that as well? You saw...
no, I just at that point it was
Just
like I
passion.
like coding. This is cool. I put a couple words on the screen. Something
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
It's like this is a skill I didn't want to lose. So I stuck that route.
Right.
And luckily with the internship, I got that plus the full range of what I learned in school.
Yeah.
Being with that HR company, I started as a technical writer where I was just documenting what the code does, and then I learned how to write back and forth these applications to do
Right.
these things.
Right.
So after that, came back. Flew back to Tampa, hit the pavement again. Had like I want to say maybe 20, 30 interviews lined up. Probably had an interview for, 20, 30 interests. Probably had half of those interviews lined up. still no car, sleeping on my friend's couch,
Okay.
hitting trying to learn the bus system to go to these things, but
Right.
little to none bit because the conversation started
And again,
good.
back in Tampa.
Back in Tampa,
Yeah.
conversation started good until they found out I was international, and
Right.
that usually means that they have to do additional paperwork
Yeah.
and extra costs.
Yeah.
And little of them knew that I had like a OPT to work,
Right.
but they just wasn't prepared to go down that route.
Mm-hmm.
I guess because they needed to hire somebody fast or whatever. So it wasn't until I interviewed with a company called Spark in Tampa, where the founders of the company didn't care about that. I mean, they did the 4-hour interview, they got the job, called me into the office to put me in QuickBooks, and then they asked me like, "Oh, so are you American or not?" I was like, "Well, let me just get my stuff, let me go pack up," and then they didn't care, and that was the first like big.
And this company
lie.
did what?
Full service advertising, but they specialize really on the branding side of things. So they work with different brands like Sweet Bay, Visit Tampa Bay,
Right.
To do
And
all around
video
experiences.
production, social
All of
media,
that. We had a studios team, we had a creative team, which I was a part of, and I kind of tether between that and the strategy team. And then you have like accounts, and then you had like just the creative directors. So the full
So
suite.
to a degree, you were fish out of water because while you were on the technical side, coding,
Right.
HTML,
Right.
this was a realm of stuff you hadn't touched before.
Correct, but to a degree, I was forced to touch it because even in that period of time where I was hitting the pavement trying to find a job, that's what took me from wanting to be with the enterprise more to being on the solo side of me in terms of open source programming.
Right.
Because there was a world of programming that you didn't have to buy a Microsoft suite
Right.
to learn. It's
Right.
just people publish their code online. you
Amazon
copy it.
apps.
Right. And that
Yeah.
was growing in that time too. So
Yeah.
all those time, during that time, I was trying to find jobs to work with. The downtime, I was practicing coding.
Nice.
And like every job that I got, and I did an interview and they asked me something I didn't know, I would take that, learn
Yeah.
how to code. And by that time I got to that last job, I had at least a high level overview of how to answer certain questions and
Right.
then kind of work from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So at this company, you do marketing.
Mm.
This company does full suite marketing. Let's segue into marketing for a bit and talk about your thoughts on what a brand should look like from a marketing perspective now. And there's so many schools of thought about it. But let's hear. And so, cause I think I don't know if venture co-working is the ideal scenario for a company because it's kind of unique, right? There are physical limitations on how much business you could do based on. I mean, you have different models. Let's talk about a real estate company, I guess, since that's lowest hanging fruit. What, and again, based on your experience working at this company, what should a brand like ours be doing?
Well, the one thing this company taught me was that brand, in essence, is the soul of the company. Everything else kind of stems from that. Not only marketing, how your culture and values of a company kind of comes from that. Like the brand is like that little gelatin, gooey thing with the gas floating around
Yeah.
it, like
Yeah.
the soul essence of the company.
Yeah.
And to me, marketing as an extension of that is basically that voice of the brand. Like how, if the brand is the personality, like how am I having these conversations with different people or in different mediums?
Right.
Right? And even to extend that goal, you could get really meta down in terms of how you have these conversations on social media, whatever platform you do. But like,
Yeah.
my company as a brand, what are the values? Even earlier than what it looks like or what typeface you, what are the values? What is the mission? What is the main goal that this thing that we are trying to build is based around? And then marketing or how we do operations kind of act as the manifestation
Right.
of that particular thing.
Right.
So for a real estate company, again, it depends on what the values are. But if, especially you are a real estate company that has a niche, right? Let's say, for example, luxury.
Let's say
Yeah.
under 500,000.
Right. Is that luxury or is that not?
No,
luxury?
that's not luxury.
Okay. So if it's under 500,000, a company like that may be more the tone of voice of that. And you could reverse engineer it back and forth.
Certainly.
So that may be a conversation of somebody that isn't affluent, isn't like, they
Right.
have a decent amount of,
Right.
of savings. Somebody you could have a conversation with at a coffee shop and you don't need to go to a fancy
Right.
bar with,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if I work backwards, I would ask the question of the company: is that a company that have those same values as well too, or are you a company that is just capitalizing on this type of customer segment to
Right.
get to a better place? So you could call yourself a luxury company,
Right,
You know what I mean? Like, do you really care about
Yeah.
the family, the small family, or are you using that kind of like as a pedestal to get somewhere else? If
Right.
that is the case, then and that's fine too, because brands change and develop over time. But usually those stronger brands are the ones that stick closer to what the core values were.
Yes.
And they act on those core values.
Yeah. So let's talk about this practically. What you sit with us and you're doing a brand consultation. What are you telling us that we should do socially?
Well, it still comes with a lot of conversations about where you want to be, what you want to do. Socially, you mean in social media, or you just mean in interaction with people?
I meant specifically social media, but I'd like to hear and let's create a hypothetical situation. And
Right.
again, based on what you know about our company as well. What are you going to suggest we do?
So a few questions first. Who's your target audience?
Right.
Who
So we specialize in properties under 500,000. We dabble in properties over 500,000. Yeah.
do you feel like that target audience spends time on Facebook? Like,
Yes,
they spend
considerable.
Considerable amount of time. What are they
Uh-huh.
doing on Facebook? Are they wasting time on Facebook? Or are they literally on Facebook to find information about what you're selling? Or are they on Facebook and you're hoping to catch them in a commercial break or something like that?
Combination of the three.
Okay.
Combination of the three.
Okay, so in that regard of them, it's just catching them where they are, right? Like,
Yeah.
are you solving a problem for them? Or are you providing something that is a different alternative to what they have?
Yeah.
If they really have a dire problem, then they come running at your door for a
Right.
particular thing. Let's say
Right.
they just lost the house or something like that. But if they are in the mood of just searching around, if they want to play keeping up with the Joneses and be like, oh, maybe this is a better upgrade than what I had before,
Right.
then all that, you could have the same photo for each of those things, but maybe the caption may be different, or maybe the service offering may be different, or the solution that you provide may be different. So even though you might have that target audience there, they're in different moods and they're in different states. Not
Right.
only having different conversations, and then the medium that you have on there are different. So like, if it's under 500,000, somebody's looking for an upgrade. They probably watch HGTV. They probably have a Pinterest board that they're doing like an inspiration on either side. You need to catch them or have the conversation where they're at in terms of, hey, this is a combination of those things
Right.
that you dream about. Maybe let's have a conversation. If they're on Facebook wondering, I just lost my home. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I have some savings. I don't want to break the bank.
Right.
Boom, here's a listing of what we have that could be in your price range that fit the family that you need. Different conversations
Yeah.
for the same
Yeah.
purpose.
Right. What platforms are you thinking of generally? And what platforms would you suggest a company like ours?
Any platform where most of the conversation is happening. That's on a general perspective. For real estate, I mean, it's still visual at the
Right.
end of the day.
Right.
So any medium that facilitates visual access to what
Yes.
you provide,
Yes.
definitely do it. LinkedIn may be good to network and deal with other realtors, not necessarily for the customers or where you're at.
Okay.
Unless you go over that tier of 500,000 where you have the creme de la creme who spend a lot of time on this, and then they're also getting their information from that. But outside of that, people on Instagram that they're probably building a collection,
Right.
and they're looking at
Right.
different houses and
Right.
they follow different things and they're
Yeah.
building their dream house. A conversation like that. Facebook, it could be either or. It could be just photos and visuals, or it could be articles and blogs about owning a home, what you need to know about owning a home, all that stuff. If it's Pinterest, it's definitely like a mood board, a wish
Right.
list, all those things, and that may or may not be tied to Amazon if you look at it as a social network in terms of getting furnishings and how to buy those things, and not only to also use that as a visual board, but to compare prices.
Right.
And to see what better deals that we could get, which is also a scary thing in real estate too, because there's so much things that go with just the house. Once you get the house,
for sure.
you gotta fill the house.
For sure.
What am I putting in the house?
Yeah.
Inside the house is
Yeah.
important as that. Maybe even landscaping to a degree.
Right.
It's a component of it. It's like a big nest of different things that you could play in, and
Certainly.
and it just depends on where that person may be on their to-do list, and again, where you as a brand, as a company, could serve them is to catch them where they're at to make the process as easy for them as possible. Because at the end of the day, no matter what industry it is, users don't want to spend a lot of time and burn a lot of mental calories trying to figure out stuff. So the person that could kind of ease that for them is the person who will be more valuable to them at the end of the day.
How big on video? What is your thought on video for that brand?
I'll say it like this. I'll go a higher level and not just say the video or any other medium. I look at everything because of programming and management information systems as information, right?
Right.
How fast can the information I require get to me? So you could have somebody do a beautiful lit video that is 30 minutes long. But if you don't tell me what I know or draw me in the first 30 seconds to a minute, it makes no sense.
Right.
Regardless of how great the video is,
right.
how much production value you put in the video. And again, that urgency of information is really more on timing than anything versus what the medium is, right?
Right. Context.
Context. So again, you have these data saying, well, video means 30% or 40% more engagement.
Right.
It's still very vague because where are you testing that from, and what context is that related in?
Right.
I think at the end of the day, regardless if your eyes are open or closed, information needs to get to the brain. If it's something like, wow, okay, I need this right now, I think that's the most important thing you focus on.
Yep.
And then the medium kind of follows suit after that.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Well, let's talk about what you're doing here. So we ended where you were working with this company. You spent how long there?
3 years, 2.5, 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Living your own apartment.
Yeah. Well, my roommate from college, but yeah, my own apartment.
Catching a bus, or you got a car?
Well, I started catching the bus, and then I ended up doing like a hybrid system where I had a bike.
Okay.
This is pre-Uber.
Yeah.
So like I had a bike, ride to certain locations, park on the bus, and do that. But where we eventually ended up for work and home, it was just a straight shot from the island to the bus. But yeah, worked there for a while. And what we're doing here kind of ties into that story as well too, because while I was hitting the pavement, trying to figure out what I was doing, I got involved in this co-working space that they had in Tampa Bay, called the Tampa Bay Wave.
Okay.
Right. So again, hitting the pavement. Oh man, I don't feel like going back home. Let me go around town for a second. At the edge of town, I saw this thing called co-working, and I was like, okay, what is this? I don't want to go to the coffee shop. I'm tired of spending money at Indigo Coffee. Got coffee, went there, and I just saw this group of entrepreneurs just in like no holds barred, like a bunch of pirates.
Yep.
Everybody just trying to figure it out. So I just found my little corner of the universe just to open up the laptop, and then over time started talking and networking with people. You had someone who's doing accounting, somebody who's doing, who are also programmers, somebody who like just did business, and these conversations were happening organically.
Yep.
And slowly from there started getting invited to networking events and realizing Tampa was way bigger than, the bubble that I was in trying to figure out life. And like going back on before, once I got in that group of people, I just started being friendly and just really taking advantage of those opportunities. And that was something that always stuck with me. So when it was time for me to hop on the plane and get back home, one of the things I was going to miss the most was that community and that networking. So from there, I was in the kitchen with a few friends, and we always have these conversations about high level, low level stuff. And I was like, what if we just open this up one day at a coffee shop? So we did it, made the Facebook event, and then that was the first meetup that we had. And then we did that over
How many people
time.
How many people
Oh,
came?
like five.
Yeah.
Five people.
Okay.
3 of them friends. Like because
What
they felt
platform did you
obligated.
use to?
Facebook event.
Okay.
So I just did the Facebook event, and from that, one person that nobody knew came to the event, and like one of the first things he said is that I didn't know anything like this existed.
Right,
And we
right,
have a
right.
good conversation. And then from there, it started growing a little bit more, and then we did these things called pitch nights.
Nice.
Where, again, taken from the same textbook of the startup community, is you have an idea, you pitch it no matter what it was, and we did this thing called a community pot. So whatever amount of money you wanted to put in, you put in the pot, the best pitch of the night. Got it. And then like I would front some cash to get pizza and some drinks, and then it was a good time, and that grew from there.
Yeah.
And then we eventually called it Shift the Culture, where it's just this community of entrepreneurs and creatives, just like not only for networking, but realizing it's not easy going it solo here at all.
Absolutely.
But it was good to know that there was a support system in the community growing. And that kind of grew from there. Transitioning a little bit to where we are in this space right now, venture co-working.
Yeah.
We had the opportunities to.
Now that's a big jump. You didn't come back from Tampa. You didn't. Let's.
Well, that's 3 to 5 years. Okay, so in that 3 to 5 years, fast forward, we did bigger pitch nights, bigger events. One of the biggest things that we did in that period of time was Starter Island. I don't know if you heard of that or familiar with that.
Oh, okay. Because it almost sounded for a second like you said you started an island.
Oh, no. That's a little culty. That's a little culty. No. But it's Starter Island. So Starter Island was based off a startup competition I did in the States before. It was called Startup Bus. Where different entrepreneurs from different parts of the U.S. Hopped on a bus, and they had 3 days to build a product leading up to South by Southwest in Texas.
Okay,
so
tell me about it. I've been hearing about it. Don't
South by
know
Southwest?
It. Yes.
So it's just a big festival. It's like a
lot of talks. What is it like?
So
it's
you
like
have
Comic-Con for businesses?
You could say that, yeah, to a degree. So it's 3 main sections. You have the technology, which also includes business.
Right.
You have film, which is just like more the independent upcoming films, kind of like a Sundance thing.
Yeah.
And then you have music, so a lot of the up and coming artists.
Nice.
Like performing in this
happening
big Austin,
simultaneously
Texas.
or one day.
So they kind of stream into each other. So the business section with the talks and all the presentations happen first, and then movies start like 1 or 2 days in, and then music starts at the end.
Okay.
So it's like a 10-day in total event.
Right.
But it was just the craziest people you meet.
I could imagine.
Like I met the founder of Foursquare. I don't remember you remember that.
Yeah,
Foursquare.
of course.
In the elevator by mistake.
Just
coming down, and he was just there, and he gave me his card, and he was like, he's asking me where from, all that. So it was a great experience. I did that twice.
Nice.
The second time, met somebody from Google in the advertising department, and I ended up visiting Google in New York. That was crazy.
Cool. Yeah.
That was a mind blowing experience. But like, yeah, it's just a place that you want to see what's happening next.
Right.
In the world, and it's a great experience. But anyway, Starter Island was based on that, where it's like, okay. I would really like to do an event like this, but we can't really do it on a bus because it's only 21 by 7 miles. And I met up with business partner Steven Cartwright, and he at that time he was doing charters on this boat.
Okay.
And he showed me a tour of the boat, and I was like, "Yo, this could possibly work." So at the end of it all, we raised some funds to get some sponsorship.
And the idea was what? Was
5 days
Yeah.
from Nassau to Exuma and back, build the idea on this boat, along with you having this kind of roadmap of building this idea.
Right.
We making like challenges along the way in
Yeah.
terms of like diving for conch or or whatever.
Yeah.
So making it a good experience,
Yeah.
but then also doing that. At the end of the trip, we went to Green Parrot, and then we pitched in front of like business people and in front of audience.
Nice.
And from that.
Nice.
So that happened. And we did that 2 or 3 times.
Wow.
The first time we did it on the boat, but the second time we did it in Eleuthera, working with one Eleuthera Foundation, and then the third time we did it locally again, just all motion. Yeah,
That's pretty awesome. How recent was the last?
The last one was in 2016, so we haven't done it in a while, but we still use a lot of the fundamentals for like the business development and consulting that we do otherwise.
Right.
But anyway, that happened. One thing led to us securing a space to do some co-working, like say, okay, this work. We are actually in a space around the corner.
Okay.
Small space in Dugar Plaza. Didn't really pop off like that, so we put it on the shelf, focus on other business ventures.
Right.
Team Thought and Method, which is the agency, me, Tony, and Sasha, business partners. And then these guys opened up around the space, and at that time we weren't actively doing shift the culture stuff, but we wanted a home to do it, and it ended up us working with these guys, seeing over and saying, okay, we'll do shift the culture events here, and then we'll kind of cross promote, and eventually won't get too much into detail, but it ended up giving us an opportunity to kind of manage the space as well too, and we use this kind of as the anchor for a lot of our activities,
Right.
as well as the business stuff, especially with the small business development center.
I want to hear this part of the story where you come back to Nassau. So what happens with your work there at Spark?
Okay, so here's the thing, and back to you saying, so it goes back to, I didn't necessarily want to end up being an entrepreneur.
Okay.
That was a big keynote, because in a perfect world I probably would have been back at Spark, because my temporary visa was up, the extension of it was up.
Right.
But I would put in a bid for my H-1B, which is the work visa to work there, but it's still a lottery. But I didn't get the lottery. But in that time, I still had to come back home, so I was working remote for them for a while.
Right.
It turned out that I wasn't going back, but they still were showing me how to run a business at the same time, or like I was at least learning more responsibilities of like time tracking and all that good jazz.
Right.
But when it turned out I wasn't going back, they essentially became my first client. So
Coding or doing what?
programming,
Okay.
a little bit of brand development,
Okay.
but primarily coding.
Okay.
And then from there, a lot of other agencies that I knew in the area that I didn't really engage with, because I was fully with Spark, they started giving me projects, and then I started building my portfolio from there,
Nice.
and then it started
Nice.
balancing off with work over here.
Okay.
And it kind of evened out
Yeah.
on the next side, and then just
Okay.
started the consulting.
So you come back to Nassau.
Mm-hmm.
Do you miss living in Tampa?
I miss, not necessarily I'm homesick, I miss the people.
Okay.
I definitely miss the people in the community of Tampa, and if I was still over there, it would have been vice versa, because
Right.
I think the people kind of make the place.
Certainly.
And I don't know if you're tethering on this. People always talk about, well, at least people in my set, about that brain drain, or like wanting to go a different location. I firmly believe, no kind of pixie dust thing, is that you should be able to make a life wherever you are. Not necessarily saying anything to somebody else, because me, myself, have benefited from the opportunities of being in a different location. But I think when you get to the point where, which a lot of people aren't, get confident, and to a degree I still am not, because I'm still learning
Right.
the skills and what I can do with my skills, and the flexibility of the choices and decisions that you have. You could take anything that doesn't necessarily look shiny at first and make a great opportunity
Certainly.
out of it.
Certainly.
And I think by extension of being here and kind of thugging it out over the last 5 years, now we're starting to see the fruition of a lot of things just from playing the long game. Are we where we want to be at? Hell no.
Right.
And I read a book one time on startup communities, especially too. It had one quote that stuck with me, is that to do anything like this is like, it's a 20-year game. So
Right.
to even expect anything less than that,
Yeah.
just don't. Just
Yeah.
just write it off,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think we're at that. We as a unified kind of wavelength want to see things happen as fast as possible. And it may happen as fast as possible, but don't bank on that, and it's okay if it doesn't. I think
Right.
people get frustrated and they hit this wall because things don't happen right away, or things don't do it the way. And I've been prone to that too. But I've learned if I stick it out a little bit longer, usually something will happen, and then you'll fall again, and then you'll rise.
For sure.
But I think regardless of what happens, high and low, you gain a lot of experience, and you learn how to develop skills in a different way, and you always have that in your toolkit, no
Yeah.
matter what your title is.
Absolutely.
I'm way over skills versus titles.
Absolutely. So now you're operating a space called Venture Co-working, one of the first, which is a kind of a new dynamic in Bahamian businesses, where as opposed to tell us about it. Tell us about Venture Co-working.
So venture co-working, we'll say, is a spaces, tools, and resources for entrepreneurs. We like this to kind of be an ecosystem and an environment that obviously doesn't operate. It operates differently than a normal office space or workspace. First and foremost, everybody is in with the same company. You have a lot of different businesses, not only like kind of stationed in the space, but that move through the space in and out frequently.
Right.
And that dynamic gives you a lot of exposure to a lot of possibilities without having ego getting too involved in terms of hierarchy of being
Right.
this one company. Because everybody at the end of the day is competing against themselves to build something.
Certainly.
And you're doing that together versus
Yeah.
feel like you're doing that alone.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at the bigger realm of things, where like either you're at a 9 to 5, or primarily people are at a 9 to 5, and they have this idea which is a side gig, but not a lot of people are fully entrepreneurs for whatever reason it may be, because I mean the environment itself doesn't really lend to that. The ease of doing business is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But hopefully when we talk about the tools and resources, venture co-working is a space that also wants to limit that as much as possible,
Right.
even if it's just from a shared knowledge perspective.
Right.
So outside of the spaces that we have these tools, what I would call like the conference room and the meeting room, that allow you to kind of maximize the opportunities of what you would do in your business outside of what you could do, possibly do at a coffee shop or at a meeting
Right.
space. But we also have like intellectual property, like the podcasts, like our archive of resources that we built up over time.
Right.
Even to a degree of having a conversation, having these readily available for you to use. But what it ultimately leads up to is that what it may take you 6 months for you to figure out on yourself, you could find out in a few days or a week or two.
Right.
And that, by extension, speeds up that process. And what that does by extension is help individuals with their confidence of saying, I could do this, right? Because I think even if you have a great idea, there's still a lot of noise in terms of what do I do? Am I doing this? Does this make sense? So from jump, we just want this to be we want Venture to provide a headspace for possibilities, for people to really discover what they want to do over a period of time, and then have these conversations in the space.
Yeah. Let's talk for a moment about the pros and cons of a co-working space.
Oh yeah, so pros, let me start with the cons. I mean, again, everybody's individual. Everybody kind of has their own hierarchy in how they do things, which is a pro to a degree too, but you just don't have that manpower as if you were a 30-person company by extension. The space in general here is limited. And then it's still a lot of personal skills one has to develop to really maximize the opportunities or to do in the space, right?
Right.
So like, for example, if I need to get work done today, I can't be fully open to all the traffic
Right.
in the space because
Right.
there's just a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
If you're aware of that, then you could kind of combat that. Most people may just go into space and think they're productive, but not them. But that's the same thing with a coffee shop or working in your home in pajamas. The difference is how do we educate you on that awareness so you know how to navigate with that in your own life to be successful. Outside of that, I think another con, I'll think about the cons. There's a lot of pros. I spend a lot of time with the pros. But like pros is just that shared knowledge, that networking, the
definitely.
resources that you wouldn't have normally have access to.
The capital intensity, I think, was a big one for a number of companies. You know, when you and I met, I told you that our company, I think we see a bit of a paradigm shift in real estate, where you know it's all about convenience. And when we were talking earlier about value proposition, I was thinking about, you know, for the most part, generally speaking, any realtor can show you a home, right? The showing of a home is not a, you know, it's not an intellectual property, right? There's a bathroom, there's a house, the square footage is blah blah blah. What makes a company or a real estate company unique is their negotiation, their ability to get the deal done, their ability to put all of the resources you're going to need for the home purchase in one shop, but also the added conveniences.
Right.
And so when we thought about this move for us as opposed to one big space with a conference room, multiple offices, blah, 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 we thought about convenience and where the market is going. And so we see our space here at Venture Co-working as the first of three spaces, one central, this represents a central, one west and one east, where if an agent needed to operate out of home, needed to operate in some form of business, they could do that at a convenient for them. And more specifically, the client, who we are looking to find ways that make it easier for them to do business with us, that they could say, oh, well, I'm East already, I'm West already, you don't have to come on the next side of the island to meet me, meet you where you are.
Perfect. And like that is where we've learned over time of taking over the space, is that's where we need to be in the conversation.
Right.
So venture isn't a build it and they will come. It's how does venture and whatever we provide fit in the story of you and what you need.
Right.
Like, and that's in that regard, venture isn't only a space, it's a resource that you could use depending on where you need for what you need.
Certainly.
So, and that's being said, thinking about another con is the long tail education of that for what that means for entrepreneurs, because it isn't something you just don't get unless you live in the space, and then unless you look at the space in that perspective of how it could be beneficial for you. So when we have somebody come in, they ask about the space, they'll be like, okay, cool, but what we really need is to spend that time to figure out what are you trying to achieve and how could venture be a part of that story for you. So I think that's where we're at right now. So I think a challenge more so for us is how do we kind of compress that where it's understandable that this fits in kind of a roadmap of what you want. But the bigger mission in general is that a lot of people don't know what their roadmap is.
Right.
Or at least they have the bits and pieces, but they need to kind of line it up in a particular order for things to get done and execute.
Yeah. I want to run the scenario just so people could have a real picture of this, and you know, maybe we'll get into some of the companies that are operating out of here. But you know, you think about our company and a company we just had on the show, KLK Consulting, who operates from here as well, and the cost that they would have had to come up with up front if they wanted an independent space, and the resources that are here. So we think about a rental. We're talking at minimum $1,500 in this area, right? If they wanted their independent space, obviously because you have renovated this space, you know what those costs could get up to. But think about KLK's office now, conference room, bathroom, kitchen, small conference room, reception area. Was your take? So they're already $4,500 in.
Then we got to talk about the Wi-Fi setup if they did that as well. So just regular coffee. And
so throw out the numbers. So we
printing.
Yeah.
That could easily run. Let's say a startup just getting in. Maybe 6-7 to get in.
Yeah.
And that is in the other stuff that you have to pay in terms of business license and corporation.
So we up to 10 already.
Yeah, we up to 10. Easy 10. If you have to pay, if you have staff, or even just for resources that you do for your digital subscriptions and stuff like that. Like, thinking about it now, it could easily get like to 9 and 10.
Yeah.
And again, it's what you make of it, because as I see in KLK or any other companies in the space prior to, as I've seen them organically use these spaces as they look at it, right?
Right.
So this conference room isn't just a conference room for either of you guys. You could pull apart the desk and make it a workshop, or make it, you know, or do a presentation on the screen.
Right.
Or if you just have a one-on-one with a client where that meeting space feels more intimate, that's where you could kind of wrestle with those negotiations and those proposals. Even if it's just a space where you need your clients to wait or to network with other people, get information for the other businesses in there with the billboard or the cards. Like, all of those things happen, and we want to put that kind of in a line for you to really maximize it. So, and I think by extension is kind of how I look at the world in general, is that imagination and that perspective, and we just provide the space for you to kind of fill that cup with what you want to do, and then we learn from y'all as well too. Right. So we see you guys do it in Van and Here and say, "Oh, word, that could work that way." Right. Like I guess before we went in there, it was like a T-shaped kind of format with the desk. I was like, "Oh shit, I never saw it like that," and we learn and we grow over time. Yeah. And that experience helps us to move faster and faster for the next client. So it's like it's a working relationship between both people. Certainly.
Yeah. And so definitely the capital intensity of an independent space pales in comparison to what you'd spend here. Again, you know, venture co-working, I think they have a range of, I think you're fully occupied at the moment?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Any vacancies coming up anytime soon?
We might have one person moving out soon, and again, that's the nature of the business as well too. For sure. So and we built venture co-working as a space where we don't intend for anybody to stay there the whole time.
Right.
If we're doing our job right, growth happens. You need to get in
Yeah.
a bigger space.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But even if you're outside of that space, you're still a part of that community. You're still somebody we network with who could still use the resources of the spaces. Like you might get another conference room where you're at, but if you need overflow, you're always
Right.
here.
Right.
The people that network in the space always getting access to that information, even if it's like a focus group or just to test an audience or just a networking event.
Right.
This what we are doing here, and by extension, Shift the Culture. We're slowly building that bubble of a community for people to get the benefits of without necessarily physically having to be in the space, and
Right.
that's a long game.
Right.
That's
Right.
a long,
right.
long game.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wanna thought we digress briefly. So we were talking about capital intensity.
Yes.
Then we went on to so a range of 7x10s and 10x10s.
Yeah. So 10 by 10, $650 a month. 7 by 10 is $550 a month.
Right.
And then we usually rent out the conference room and the meeting rooms on an hourly rate.
Right.
60 an hour and 25 an hour.
Right.
Those are like the more frequent rotations, and
Yeah.
then we have monthly membership as well too, which gives you the benefits of the space and those discounted rates on different things.
Right.
So we're still crafting what that looks, but like we wanted to make it as flexible and accessible to different people at different levels.
Right. Let's talk briefly about your new promotion that I see you put up the board for.
Power ups.
Yeah.
Yeah. So power ups is our attempt to solve the problem of getting clarity or knowing what step you need to do next for entrepreneurs. How internally we kind of have this system of how we have different levels of entrepreneurships. So we have 4 levels. Kind of that first level is like side giggers and entrepreneurs that may be still in a 9 to 5, but has this idea that they need to get out. A level 2 may be somebody who's done that jump, been in it for like 0 to 3 years. Level 3, 5 to 7 years, probably grew a little bit more, needs to figure out how to get more efficient. And then a level 4 that has all these big components in it, but maybe needs a little bit more strategic push.
Right.
Or knowing what to do next or how to capitalize on what they have already. Power ups are just as designed to have a conversation with those individuals, and we have these cards to kind of visualize what that process may be, but ask questions in particular components to understand what tools and resources they may need at particular levels, and that is pulling from our database or repository of resources that we built over time,
Right.
but also puts it in the context of how they could use the space given where they are in that particular path. So level 1, who is still very much dedicated to 9 to 5, they can still get the benefits of having access to the space with general membership, or if they have an event to launch something, they could definitely use the conference room or the meeting room.
Right.
Or level 2, they may be in the market for having their own dedicated office space. We provide that. A level 3, maybe more pitches and presentations and sales, training. Then level 4, maybe like if you're doing hires, focus groups, hiring,
Right.
negotiation.
And so the power up promotion is a consultation that may result in spaces and rental here.
Correct.
Right.
But,
so it's predominantly a consultation.
Yeah, but ultimately it visualizes something that probably may not be visual before, because most of the people that we talk to, at least when we did the beta test for the power ups, I think their first reaction of it would be like, okay, this wasn't lined out for me before.
Right.
There's a lot of ideas floating in the head. We kind of outlined those ideas, and even if you decide not to go with us, at least you walk away with some clarity of what may or may not be the next step for you, and for us, that adds value, which adds to the community in general,
Right.
regardless of you being in the space or not.
Right. Right. I'd like to challenge you, put you on the spot.
Go ahead. Go off.
I'm building my audience, and I'd really like to offer a giveaway, and maybe you could propose or offer a level 1 consultation to someone who is there's the groan, someone who is dedicated to the 9 to 5, as you mentioned, but they have already put some of the ducks in alignment for their transition to start their business.
Okay. Yeah.
Would you be willing to do that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah?
You got that.
Okay.
Good. You heard it there first. Yeah, no, for sure. We'll definitely do that. Yeah.
Good.
And then we'll also see their response from that too, because again, the beautiful thing about the power-ups is also a learning experience for us.
Right.
So we may hear something we never heard before, and then from that interaction, we continue to build on our resources over that time as well too. And then we learn from the strategy as that as well too, and then the consultancy kind of builds up over time.
Good.
So it's a win-win.
Good. Okay. I think we covered a lot of meat. I really like the conversation here. Tips for someone who might be frustrated, underpaid, unsure about how to make money alternatively.
Okay. Get a notebook, or pen and paper could work as well too. Draw a line in the middle, 4 spots, representing a conceptual timeline. Think about yourself from the beginning to where you are right now. Highlight the things that stick out the most, primarily what you think are character strengths that you have, skills, and then match what you kind of brainstorm and put down in the notes with where you want to be, right? And try to see how those align.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing with that frustration is I think a lot of people right now, with all the noise out there, and without knowledge of the tools that we have out there, especially as basic as just pen and paper, is to sit down with your thoughts and try to map out yourself or audit yourself.
Right.
We call it an audit.
Right.
Right. And I think it would be just like if you're building a building or you're working on some code, it'll be ill-advised to try to build something without knowing the clay, the bricks of it. And you may say, okay, that may be a waste of time. I don't see the benefit of it. For me personally, I've seen things that stuck out to me in my childhood that definitely helped me where I am right now, right? So like, again, even with computer being the primary, computer systems being the primary thing for me, I see everything as a system now.
Right.
Communication being a system,
Right.
personal habits being a system. But if I look back on where I was in elementary, high school, I've seen different components of what I was really interested and passionate about, whether that may be video games or card games, that inform what I do today. Like we used to build Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh decks, but now we go from building pitch decks, right? It's the same. It's the same premise. And that perspective has helped me a lot. Or like using humor as a tool when I was younger, using that as a tool in programming and marketing today. So, but I wouldn't have gotten to that point or realized that I had these strengths and weaknesses if I didn't spend a gross amount of time with myself outlining these things and brainstorming.
Right.
And again, the beautiful thing about writing, it doesn't have to go in a line.
Right.
Or you shouldn't put it in a line, because I think that's where people get stuck again. Just let it flow and then see what patterns you can notice.
Yeah.
And then next, you see these little darts start to become bigger blobs.
Right.
And then something kind of forms out of that way.
Yeah. And so I've conceptualized, I like makeup, and I watch YouTube tutorials all the time, and people always compliment me on my makeup. Where do we go from there?
So if you're in that realm, try. And again, a lot of this starts with information of what you think you know, or like what is out there. Definitely have I think at any point, any stage you're at, if you have an idea, get comfortable with having that conversation about that idea. Because and we said this in different videos and interviews and stuff like that, but like, I think one of the biggest disservice that we do to ourselves is that we think someone will take my idea. Right? Now, there have been extreme cases. I won't deny that may or may not have happened, right? But that's still an overarching thing. That's like saying all men are dogs. Right? You know what I mean? It's like, if you do that, you just disqualify yourself from learning the possibilities of what could come out of that.
Yes.
Right? So, and that's what we try to do in environments and ecosystems like pitch nights, where we make it comfortable for you to share your idea. When people usually somebody new comes to a pitch night, and we ask them, are you going to pitch an idea? Say, no, I'll just sit back and watch, right? And then when they see how we do it, they'll be like, okay, that's what it is. I'll do it there. We want people to get comfortable with those ideas, because as much as you may be scared that someone may quote unquote take your idea, which I think at the end of the day it comes back down to execution. Only you could do it the way you do it.
Absolutely.
You get a treasure trove of people willing and able to just say, "Oh, did you think about this, or what you thought about that?"
Yes.
And again, that shared knowledge that takes you either 5 more steps in the direction that you want, or reduces a lot of the frustration that you've been putting on yourself just by keeping it in your head.
Yeah.
Right? So again, go into the makeup artist, talk to other makeup artists, talk to people who you may be your customers, right? Talk to people who have done it successfully around the world. You don't have to know them,
Right.
but try to look at those, be observant, ask questions, and dissect it.
Yeah.
And then again, tie that to your skills or your strengths that you've seen in your own personal audit.
Right.
Find out how to marry the two where it's easy for you to execute on it, and then you build something from there. And it's always like a test tube thing. You always refine. You always refine. You always refine.
Are you a big believer in free?
Yes.
Okay.
Meetups and pitch nights, free.
Right.
Because at the end of it, we still get something. They still get something.
Right.
And free to me now. Again, free doesn't necessarily mean easy. So we always look at efficiency. It's like, okay, what do we do that could always be replicated? What's easy for us to do that fits in our schedule?
Right.
Is it feasible for us to do this free?
Right.
If it is, why not?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Okay. Well, Travis, I really appreciate your time. Appreciate you sitting with me.
Yeah, my guy.
I can't wait till this launch and see the feedback, and hopefully we could find someone from the listening audience. Again, just to repeat it, Travis is willing to offer. And what is this?
Power ups.
What does it cost? I saw it.
Is $150 basic, $250 boost. Like with that consultation, we'll do like a few assignments for you as well too. So the basic they'll get for free.
Yeah. So that's tremendous value that someone who is, and again, who's the perfect person for this level 1?
Somebody who is in a job right now, has a dream, they have this thing that they can't stop thinking about, but they just don't know how to launch it or where to launch it. That's the person that we're looking for at the level 1 at the basic package.
Yeah. And so if you're listening to this right now, it depends on when you're hearing this. We might have already found the person.
Cold.
Yeah, we might have already found the person. But send me an email at or send me a text. I think that's probably easiest. 808-6868. WhatsApp or give me a call. Matt, have you guys found the person yet? I'd like to be considered as the company that consults for this level 1 offering. It's from the numbers I just ran, I think it's about a $350-$400 offering where they're going to give you free consultation on your business and how to get it launched. Yeah. So, Travis, again, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you for being on the show.
You've been listening to another episode of the AFL Brand Podcast. Thanks for listening in.